8 o'clock. You made a reservation. So
Yeah.
We're all set.
Change your reservation.
what time is it?
You didn't see my,
Welcome to the April 18th Policy and Priorities Committee meeting. I note that quorum is present, and I call the meeting to order. And with everyone's indulgence on a rookie, we'll get through this. Okay, our first item of business is the adoption of the agenda. Is there any changes to be made? Yes, Councilor.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to add item 5.3, and it's with respect to requesting a report from staff regarding our urban design guidelines and downtown master plan, and specifically with respect to the plans to entrench that in a bylaw so that it has some teeth. So I'd like to have that added, Mr. Chair, if I may.
Okay. Anyone, any other changes? Yes, Councilor Grabiak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wonder whether we can add somewhere appropriate on the agenda a status report on the comprehensive zoning bylaw.
I'll turn it over to the CEO.
oh, thank you, Mr. Chair, through you. Unless it's urgent, I know that the director is planning an update at the next COW meeting with regards to that, along with the issue that was raised by Councillor Kersey. So if you can wait until then, I'm sure the director will include it in her monthly report. Or if council wishes to get information tonight, that's fine, just so you're aware. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I can certainly wait. I'm looking for to be brought up to date at some point soon. Thank you.
I'd be happy to wait too, Mr.
May
Chair,
2nd, yeah.
provided that it does come forward at the next COW with some specific recommendations to enact those two documents.
Okay. And we'll see that we have those. Okay, any other adoptions to the agenda? Okay, then we'll vote on the agenda as is. All in favor? Okay, thank you.
So now you're gonna sign this.
Okay.
Okay, just give it.
Sorry?
You're just gonna sign that.
Oh.
Disclosure of pecuniary interest.
So, after viewing the agenda, do any council members have any pecuniary interest or to declare?
No, Mr. Chair.
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay, that is being noted. So now we move on to new business. And,
Motion by Councillor King.
oh, and, what, I'm sorry.
So you have a motion by Councillor King, or you
Yeah.
can just read it, or I can help me read it if you wish.
So we have a motion by Councillor King that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive this issue summary report for information as it pertains to the application fire number SP 0615, municipally known as 1421 Pelham Street. That committee directing planning staff to prepare the bylaw and site plan agreement authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter into the site plan between the town of Pelham and McGill Tupel Family Holdings. That committee direct planning staff to prepare the bylaw and encroachment agreement authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter into an encroachment agreement between the town of Pelham and McGill Tupel Family Holdings. That council approve the bylaw and into site plan agreement with McGill Tupel Family Holdings. And that council approve the bylaw and into an encroachment agreement with McGill Tupel Family Holdings. Discussion on the motion. Yes, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to see this come forward. I'm also pleased to read through the report to see that staff has taken to heart the urban design guidelines and the downtown master plan, and to see that the Committee of Adjustment also has moved in the same direction to allow this type of development to move forward that results in the intensification that was envisioned in our new OP and in those two other supporting documents. I would hope that that our comprehensive bylaw that would be coming forward, our zoning bylaw, will encase many of these items in there such that developers would not necessarily have to go through all of the hoops of rezoning and or zoning amendments and committee of adjustment appearances, et cetera, given that we as a council have already supported the downtown master plan and the urban design guidelines, many of which are, these items are included in. So I will be supporting this. I'm very happy to see this forward. I think it'll be a great thing for downtown.
Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? Councillor Durley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It states in here with reference to the Pelham Downtown Master Plan, Policy 3.13, indicates that parking should be accommodated either on-street or in parking areas to the rear of the buildings. Now, I know there's parking in the rear. There's no mention whatsoever as far as numbers are concerned. I'm just wondering, development of this size, how much parking is required, and is there enough space in there for the parking, or will this be taken care of at the site plan agreement stage? I'm just concerned that, we're increasing, our goal is to increase densities, but are we going to be crowding up with parking problems in that area? Just a concern that I have, probably not warranted, but I feel I have to ask that question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, this particular development would have required 31 parking spaces. They did apply to the Committee of Adjustment and received relief of 24. And so they are providing 7 parking spaces on site. And there was a parking rationale or analysis provided by the applicant when they made their application to the Committee of Adjustment when they sought that relief.
Okay, thank you very much for that.
Okay. Councillor Rybiak, did you have something?
Oh, no, I did not, Mr. Chair, but thanks for asking.
Okay. Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just want to build on the comments from Councillor Kersey regarding this development and the one following. Looks like, really some great development for the downtown, and not that there's anything wrong with the existing state of those lands, but it will certainly make them wonderful and improve them. So congratulations to the applicants for that. I do have a couple of questions. One is relating to parking, Mr. Chair. I did note as well that it was something that was highlighted by Committee of Adjustment. And maybe the director doesn't need to comment on it now, but there is something in the official plan and something as well in the downtown master plan in terms of parking. So the official plan talks about the idea of parking in lieu, or dollar, just like there's parkland in lieu, there could be dollars for parking in lieu. And so then that money could go to the municipality to build parking structures or do whatever is required in order to assist with parking, so that there might be common parking. And the other is that there could be other things done in terms of combining parking with properties, and I think that was envisioned in some of the future steps to be taken in the master planning document, sort of a 5 or 10 years down the way. I'm pleased to see that there is some parking here, and there could be some parking rationalization occur in the future. So I would just ask, Mr. Chair, I guess first, that maybe the director can just include some reference to that when she comes forward to council at the next committee meeting on that.
Okay, and that would be noted by the director.
Okay, thank you. Another question, so a question is about the walkway. Is this going to be a public walkway, or is this a private walkway? I think there have been discussions over the years regarding some of the other private walkways in town, especially on this side of, sort of between Pelham Town Square and Regional Road 20. There's 2 there. Can we just hear a little bit more about that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you, the intention is that this is a private walkway. If it was going to be a public walkway, then they'd need to have obtained an easement to permit the public to have full access to that walkway. But certainly, you know, people accessing those buildings will be able to use that walkway, and so it will, you know, for all intents purposes, could function as a public walkway, but it is private.
Okay. It's private now, but I think people for years have walked through that area. I remember being a young lad and walking through that area, so, and we do so today. So something to think about, I think, as council works on the downtown. And then the other question with a linked question is, it might be in the report, but does this follow the design guidelines, and then with that expectation, should we should we anticipate an application regarding the community improvement plan, the CIP funding?
Yes, Mr. Chair, through you, it does follow those guidelines, and the applicants have advised us that they do intend to apply for funding through some of the CIP funding programs that we have available. And I believe there are either 4 or 5 of the programs that we offer that they could qualify for.
Very good. Thank you very much. And Mr. Chair, just to underscore that, that's the reason for the program, to encourage this type of development. So very, very pleased that that's going to be used, and that the development's proceeding. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments on the motion before us? If not, I call the vote. All in favor? Aye. Okay. The motion is carried. There we go. Okay. Motion before us.
Councilor Rubio, yes.
Council Rubiak, that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive this issue summary report for information as it pertains to application file number SP 0715, municipally known as 1423 Pelham Street. That committee direct planning staff to prepare the bylaw and site plan agreement authorizing the mayor and clerk to enter into a site plan agreement between the town of Pelham and Todd and Michelle Barber. And that council approve the bylaw and enter into site plan agreement with Todd and Michelle Barber. Discussion on the motion. Councilman Rabiak?
Thank you. I think this is the twin to the next door neighbor that we just discussed. I'm certainly pleased that, in addition to this being a tremendous benefit to the downtown, it's good to see those businesses kind of meld together, do this thing together. I just think it's a great example. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Anyone else? I call the motion, a vote on the motion as presented. All in favor? Motion carries. Oops. Okay. Motion by, put forward by Peter Papp, that Policy and Priorities Committee receive issue summary concussion policy, and that committee recommend to council adoption of the proposed concussion policy. Discussion on this? Oh, I'm sorry, yes, Councilor Rabia?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I certainly have an appreciation for the issue. Concussions are an important subject, and of course they're gaining prominence as a number of sports are becoming aware of the damage that it has done. So I'm certainly supportive of having a concussion policy, but I do have a concern, and perhaps it's not really a concern, just needs explanation, and it has to do with the extent to which we might be exposing ourselves to liability in the event of a person who suffers a concussion while in the course of kind of normal activities, but on town property. If we create this policy, do we end up with a responsibility because we didn't explain it enough, or it wasn't prominent enough, or I'm just wondering whether someone might be able to help me understand what the potential legal impact of this might be.
Okay, perhaps the Director of Recreation can help us out?
Through you, Mr. Chair. This policy is intended to educate our users as well as the participants of our programs and the users of our facilities. What we will be doing is making sure that any users of the facilities, if their association that they are related to have a concussion policy, we'll have a copy of it, no different than their insurance. With regard to our programs, we will be making sure that everyone understands, especially the instructors, our protocol, as well as there will be information given to the participants where they can educate themselves, like websites to go on so that they are well aware of their responsibilities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, thank you, Director. So let me understand. If associations are renting town facilities, those associations will be made aware of what our policy is, and they are expected to have a policy. And presumably then, those people participating in the activities of that association will be expected to wear the safety equipment, that sort of thing. Am I right in assuming that?
Through you, Mr.
Yes.
Chair. Yes, they will be recommended to wear the safety equipment. For instance, for any of our public skates, we recommend that they wear helmets. And we also have helmets on site that they're able to use if they wish.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So obviously there's an expectation that we would have safety equipment available? And do we have that now, or is that an additional expense related to this policy?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we do have a limited amount of helmets available that they are aware and they can use them.
Okay. And I guess we won't know, Mr. Chair, through you, what our requirement will be until we've actually started using this policy and expecting people to live with it. So we don't know how much equipment we will actually need at the end of the day. It won't be much, I know, but I'm just looking for an explanation.
Correct. We will be assessing the policy, and we can report back on any additional needs if we feel that there are.
Right. And through you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that answer. Is there a burden of policing this policy with the associations? I know that they would be expected to police the activities there. Is there any obligation on the town with regard to policing in this regard?
If it is at a, through you, Mr. Chair, sorry. If it is at a facility that we staff, our staff will be watching, the activity. Or if it's one of our programs, of course, our staff or our instructor that we've hired will be responsible. If it is at the skate park, where we do not have full-time supervision, we are encouraging, recommending helmets. And as you can see through our report tonight, we are also going to be implementing a incentive program for helmets for the users as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and the Director, of course, has anticipated part of my interest, and that is the skate park. In the hypothetical case of somebody not involved in an association activity, but just informally at the skate park, not wearing safety equipment, experiencing a concussion, where does that leave us? Are we confident that we are no further behind than we currently are with regard to that?
What we are doing is through you, Mr. Chair, what we're doing is our due diligence by educating, by implementing a helmet program, We're also going to run programs down there, so it's basically education.
Okay.
And we're hoping to improve our liability risks.
Okay, so Mr. Chair, thank you very much. What I understand then is this policy will help inoculate us, to use Councillor Papp's word, from liability as opposed to increasing a liability. That's the intent and the outcome of this policy?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. As well, I'd like to note that we've worked with the public health as well as the ministry on this, and what their mandate is, they are spreading the same message out throughout the boards of education, all the municipalities, so that it's ingrained, no matter where you are, we're saying the same thing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I really appreciate the fullness of the answer. It helps me an awful lot, and I'm very pleased to get those answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Certainly appreciate the questions and from Councilor Ribiak and the question or the answers from the director. And I recall, for instance, the discussion that we had around the skate park, and there was considerable concern from members of council at that time. And one of the things, I think two things that we did. One thing is that we asked for a legal opinion, and that's sort of part of the immunizing ourselves. And the other is that we heard directly from our insurer. And our insurer, I believe, felt that the signage and the way that we approached it, et cetera, was appropriate and, ensured that we immunized ourselves, as it were, but also obviously provided information, valuable information to the users of that facility. I know from reading this report and also from speaking with the director, Mr. Chair, that there has been considerable input from Niagara Region Public Health on this. So very, very pleased to see that in Ministry of Tourism. I guess my question is, have we discussed any of this with either or both of our insurer and our legal eagles to get kind of that perspective as well, so we have a holistic view?
Perhaps the director could help?
Through Mr. Chair. We have worked with the region on this, and they have received legal advice as well. And it is our intention that it is the best that we can do, best practices, basically across the province.
Okay. I would have more comfort, Mr. Chair, if perhaps we could forward this at least to our insurer and get that view from the insurer's perspective. I think it would provide comfort to myself and Councilor Ribiak and others. And if that is the case, that it is sort of considered a best practice across the province, then we'll hear that from them directly. So
Okay.
if we can just, I'd like to hear from colleagues, sort of some colleagues picked up on that, Mr. Chair.
Councilman Kersey?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I too had some of the similar concerns that my other councillor teammates have expressed. My concern goes a little bit more towards our own staff and our in-house programs. And the level of training that they are going to be exposed to. Because if we're asking them to, we're saying that they're going to be able to document potential concussions and follow appropriate procedures. I'd like to get some clarity on how they're going to be trained. Are we going to bring in St. John's, or are we going to work with public health so that there's specific training, to be able to observe an accident and say there's potential here for concussion, so the types of things they would look for in that, because part and parcel that being able to see the injury occur is very helpful in being able to think that there's a potential concussion. But more than that, to be able to do almost a first aid examination of the child and say, I don't like this. Until you get clearance from your doctor, we need to get, and to be able to manage even more severe situations and have a protocol to deal with those situations. So could you provide some clarity through you, Mr. Chair, sorry?
Through you, Mr. Chair. All of our staff are trained. We have training sessions in all aspects. They all have their first aid, standard first aid, CPR, as well as we will be having public health come in during their training sessions, and they will be doing a education on specifically concussions. Our protocol will be, if you're in doubt, sit them out, as well as the normal, we have a incident report, the parents are called, the parents come and pick them up, and they do not return unless they have a doctor's note.
Thank you for that, Madam Director. Mr. Chair, if I may, just one further follow-up. The one thing that I kind of tweaked to when you were talking about outside groups using our facilities, you said that if our staff were on there and observed perhaps a potential concussion, that they would engage with that outside group. And I think if we do follow that, then we are exposing ourselves to some liability issues. It probably would be better if we, I know it's heartless to say, it would be better for us not to engage in that and let the renting organization deal with how they manage the concussion policy. We've exposed to them that what our policy is, and we're demanding them to have a policy, but if we intervene and take responsibility of the incident, then we are exposed to liability, I believe. And maybe that's a clarity we can get. Thank you.
Madam Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, or Mr. Mayor, I'm sorry, Mr. Chair. What I was intending was if, for instance, there is a pickup hockey game or a old timers hockey game, and if someone's out there without a helmet, that is when the staff would be involved, and because that's one of our procedures, that they cannot be having a hockey game without a helmet. If there is an injury, that's a different story. We would not be involved in the injury. 911 would be called.
So just as a follow-up through you, Mr. Chair, so for clarity, we have a policy that all our renters know in order to engage in hockey of any form, you must wear protective equipment, full protective care.
Right.
Okay, so we do have a policing responsibility at that point. Okay.
Enforcement,
I think we should run this by our insurer.
Councilman Pack?
Yes, I don't want to, I've had a lot of experience with this, so what I can share with you is, number one, run it by, I concur with our insurer, also our legal people, because on the one hand, I agree, Mr. Chair, through you to the director, education is very good, but the minute you get into diagnostics, meaning someone's injured, whether it's on a hockey rink or out on a soccer field, they collide. And once we start stepping into that area, I'd like to know what our responsibility is and how we follow through, both not only separately but jointly, because there's all kinds of ramifications for this. So I think it's worth our while to take that step, you know, just to make sure, I think, Vicki, that we're not put in a position where, you know, let's say we didn't do anything, and parents, one of their kids is injured, and they come back and they come after us. I'm not worried about the law, I'm just worried about the whole protocol of this itself. Not just arena activities, all kinds of activities that occur on municipal property that could result in that. So I'd feel more comfortable if we did have sort of a legal peer review and also with our insurance. If you don't mind, as a direction, thank you.
Anyone else on this issue? If I could just say something, I remember in my days of hockey trainer, and when you went through the training course, the guys always told you, forget about getting a great big bag, or you're just there. If there's something on the ice, you go, and as soon as there's any trouble at all, you step back and let the phone for medical. And some of these guys that were hockey trainers, they wanted to have these great big bags, and I don't know what they all put in it. And the guy said, all you need is a little carry-on, and take it, and if you see there's a problem, you step back. So it seemed to work pretty good for minor hockey, that step back and let the professionals do it. So, yes, probably a good idea, but whatever, yeah. So,
Good. So, I guess,
yeah,
Mr. Chair,
yes, ma'am.
just based on the feedback from colleagues, if I might move an amendment, I guess, which is to forward this to, or have staff forward it to legal and to our insurer and let them review the policy and report back to us.
That's
Okay, so we'll vote on that amendment. Everyone in favor?
Yeah.
Okay, amendment passes.
It's been referred to our legal. It's been referred to our legal.
So it's going to be referred to
So
staff.
You just check mark referred,
Okay.
and then you can sign that.
Okay.
And sign it. Yep, it's very fine. Thank you.
Okay,
Yeah, just,
I'm sorry. Yes?
Mr. Chair, I was just discussing with my colleague here that since this is an important policy, perhaps we could direct staff to seek the opinion and still bring the policy forward at council as opposed to waiting for another policy and priority. Like to get it in place as long as we're knowledgeable that it is a good policy and that we're protected and indemnified. Okay?
CEO?
That's no problem, Mr. Chairman. We'll include the report from the insurer and legal, and we'll put this up to regular council for pending approval as well.
Okay.
Perfect.
Thank you. Municipal? Okay, a motion by Mr. Accursi, Councilor Accursi, that the Policy and Priorities Committee receive this issue summary report for information as it pertains to municipal drain policies related to municipal drain maintenance and billing and municipal drain reassessments, and that committee recommend that council approve the two municipal drain policies titled Municipal Drain Maintenance and Billing and Reapportionment of Assessment of Municipal Drain Assessment Schedules. Discussion on this motion. Mr. Mayor?
thank you very much. I think it was sort of my suggestion that this went back to staff to tidy up the policies a little bit. There was a lot of procedures in the policy, so I just appreciate staff kind of stripping those out and giving us the overall policy itself. And it looks very, very good, so pleased. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone? Councilman Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a bit of discussion, if we may, with regard to the issue of small bills. The policy indicates that anything under $10 isn't going to be billed out. It seems to me that in the interest of openness and transparency, people who are going to get a bill, perhaps put on their tax bill sometime in the future, ought to know about it, but of course, the exercise of getting them to know about it might be just as expensive as sending them a bill. So I'm just wondering what we're planning with regard to informing beneficiaries of municipal drain improvements whose bill is very small, that in fact there's something coming to them at some point. I don't know what a solution might be, but perhaps someone's already thought of one.
Madam, I guess Barbara. Go ahead. Okay, Director of Planning?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Certainly, through you, we are going to be holding, either an open house or information meetings for the property owners that are affected by any municipal drain maintenance. At that time, we would be able to advise them of what the overall cost of the project would be, what the maintenance would be, what the anticipated cost would be, and we would be also able to inform them that if the work is less than $10 or $10 and less, then they will not receive a bill. It will show up on their tax bill, and so they will be informed in advance, knowing that. And so the policy does provide for this engagement with the community before work commences.
Thank you, Director. Councilman?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Director, for that answer. Yes, we are planning with this to inform people in advance. So there must be a process then that we have in mind for for informing people that this municipal drain work is going to happen? Is that by direct mail, or is it online, or how is that going to work?
Director of Planning?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair. It will depend on the nature and type of the work. If it's a very small project and very few benefiting property owners are impacted by them, we would certainly meet with them one-on-one and have those meetings and share that information. If it's a fairly large project and there's a number of benefiting landowners that are impacted, then we would have more of an open house type of information center. They would be notified by mail of this event. And then we would also advertise of the open house or information meeting.
Thank you, Ms. Director.
Thank you to you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that answer. I'm happy. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, so we'll vote on the motion. All in favor? Motion carries. Oh, I'm sorry, opposed? Oh, I thought Mr. Papp, I didn't see your hand.
No,
Okay.
okay, how you doing?
Thank you. Motion carried. No, none opposed. Thank you.
I'm just reading.
He's holding his head up.
Right. Jeff's killing me. I know.
Working man.
Okay, a motion put forward by Mr. Kersey that this regular meeting of Policy and Priorities Committee be adjourned until the next regular committee meeting scheduled for Monday, May the 2nd, 2016, unless sooner called by the mayor. All in favor? And it passes. Thank you.
That was the best Ricky performance I've ever seen. Good job.
Thank you, everyone, for your indulgence.
Well done.
That was very good.
Oh, Marvin.